Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. This is season 4, Learning from Legends. And we have another awesome guest for you today, Eli Q. I'm going to call him because I'll let him pronounce his last name in a second. His last name, although he told me phonetically how to pronounce it, I just don't want to mess it up, and I'm sure I would. But Eli serves the greater Philadelphia area. He is the team leader for the Q and U team, with Compass. And he's got some great tidbits to share today about how he became a team leader and building a team, which is, I think, something that for a lot of agents is feels really daunting and kind of confusing how to even go about that. I know for me, when I started to want to build a team, it was something I had a lot of questions about. So we think that you'll get some good things, and Eli will answer some of those questions today. So Eli, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to have this conversation and share anything that could be useful. So
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. And for the record, pronounce your last name for us.
yeah, so my last name is pronounced Qarkaxhia. It does starts with a Q. That's why it throws a lot of people off. So I've been known as Eli Q for a long time.
All right. Well, that's easy enough. That's good. Anything else you want to share with us about by means of introduction of you and your team?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm in the greater Philadelphia area. We serve center city and suburban markets. I've been in the business since I was 22, so it's 14 years now. It's I've known is real estate, right? Part of my adulthood, and I'm a father of 3 boys, and just enjoying life and just sharing all the wealth we've been able to build in real estate in the last 14 years with people. So
Love it, love it, love it. That's such a great way to come at it and fabulous perspective to have. And it'll be good to hear too, knowing that you're a dad and an involved dad, kind of how you built what you've built, because I think that also seems like a big task for many people out there. So you said you've been in the business since you were 22. So you were like a baby when you got into real estate. What was it? I saw on your website you bought your first house at 20. Is that right?
yeah, so I bought my first house at 20, and or just I think maybe 21, and I started investing in real estate around that time, and that was my first introduction to real estate. And I always wanted to have a business. So at that time, I think I was working at a restaurant and going to school and saving money to buying properties. And it's like, I could do this, right? Because I started to get exposed to the whole real estate industry through purchasing and talking to real estate agents. And I thought I saw a way where I can actually bring value to the marketplace, right? And I got into it. And it was 2009 when everyone was getting out of it, which was really interesting time at that as well.
Yeah. So you saw that as a period of opportunity to get in and add value, you said.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily saw because of the market that was an opportunity. I didn't know any better, to be honest with you. I just thought that I was just more focused on people, and at the level that of conversation that I was having with other agents, just like I knew there was something there that was missing, that I could bring to the table, and it was a good way for me to segment to a business, right? And I didn't think real estate was going to be that business at that time, but I knew that it could provide opportunities to create some wealth and income where I could go and do that.
So let's dig into what you just said about you from your interactions or exposure to other real estate agents. You saw that there was something missing. What was it that you think you saw, and how did that influence the agent that you became?
Yeah, so I think that at that time, obviously we were coming from a very strong market, and the market was shifting similar to what we're seeing now. And just the way that agents were succeeding at that point, it was just like you list the house on a Friday and it was sold by Monday, right? Kind of similar to what we're seeing now, but that started to change. So, and agents that I was meeting didn't know what to do, didn't have the skills, the communication to deal with a client like me, right, or other clients like that who were just, really cautious and had a lot of questions.
Mhm.
they didn't have to, right? They didn't have to learn to do that because it's just like it would just go, go, go. And I just thought that that piece was missing, and I could bring it to the table. And
Mm.
I felt like I was actually spending a lot of time as a consumer to learning to finding the answers to my questions, other than just that, my advisor to be able to help me with those. So
Interesting. So you saw the role as more advisory and consultative more than, just getting in there and being like, here's the contract paperwork, here, what terms do you want? Let's go to the next step.
yeah, it was like, what do you want to do? And it was just like nothing there, no suggestions or anything like that. Even in the negotiation part, it was just like, um, I didn't get any of those, right? It's just a matter of like almost like an order taker versus, an advisor. So,
Right, right. Okay, interesting. And when you first started, did you work with buyers primarily, or did you get into working with listings pretty early?
I got into both pretty early because it was just when I first got started, I was looking at every avenue to generate business. And obviously, like everyone else, I started my database, and then from there, just I think oddly enough, I found my way to work in expireds as well. It just at
Oh,
that office where I was at, it was just like, hey, they were distributing expired leads through a program. I don't know, it's called Land Voice. I don't know if you remember that. Um, but I would basically get that list every day, and I would just dial until I got appointments. Um,
wow. Now, was that a
yeah.
similar market where if a house didn't sell, if it expired, and maybe it was just the shift in the market, but where I'm going with this is where I'm finding now with some houses that didn't sell in like the really, really strong market, there's something wrong. Like it might not be just price. Like there might be, I mean, price cures everything, obviously, but there could be some other things. So developing scripts around the need there, that sounds like, I'm guessing, something that you got really expert at was being able to communicate and uncover what the real situation was and not just go in with a cookie cutter expired script that most agents use.
Yeah, I had to really learn that part myself, right? And you know, I think I kind of made it my own. I knew that my goal was to get face to face with that person, because if I
Mhm.
could get face to face, then I think that I had a higher chances to them working with me.
Mhm.
So I really focused on coming from a place where I've they felt understood, right? And I was listening to.
Mhm.
Um, but at that time, really the biggest reason why most properties were on the market, they were expired, was really price, right? Because the market was shifting, and a lot of sellers weren't coming to realization that it's a different market. And the
Mhm.
longer you waited without improving price, and you know the chances were that if I brought you an offer that you said no to, 3 4 months later that offer may not be on the table anymore, right?
Mhm.
Because it was that kind of market. And then
Right.
you still had the situations where there was something wrong with the property, or something wrong with a particular seller, right? They were really hard-headed on the specific issue.
Mhm.
And I think that we see that now, right? We see
Mhm.
now, in some markets here in Philadelphia, for example, that if you're going into a multiple offer in that first weekend, or you're putting an offer in the first weekend, it's like there is multiple offers, right? And you are
Yeah.
going to have to go over asking. In some scenarios, a lot over asking, depending on which market you are looking at.
Mhm.
But for some reason, right, that first buyer gets cold feet, or something happens that back out, it does like leave a ding on that listing a bit,
Mhm.
where there's just kind of wait, there's something wrong with it, which will
Yep.
give the second buyers around an opportunity to be able to obviously secure the property, but maybe have a inspection clause or have a mortgage in there without having to waive all those things.
Right.
So nowadays it feels like there's, other than price, I think there's more of those happening if properties are out selling.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And you make an interesting point about working expireds, what you were saying before about sellers taking a minute to kind of like get their heads around a shift in a market. I always say buyers learn really quickly, sellers learn really slowly. So buyers are like
Yeah.
shifting all the time and sometimes faster than they really need to be shifting. And sellers, on the other hand, they have to have it like hammered home through a variety of different sources that the market has changed. Might need to price differently. You might actually need to prep your house to sell now. You might need to fix that thing that was broken that buyers would have overlooked 6 months ago or whatever. But to
That's
that
so
point,
true.
yeah, and I think if one thing that people miss is staying in front of those sellers, and speaking specifically of expireds, if you're still in front of them when they finally get that message, when it resonates with them, and you're the person who's in their mailbox or has just called them or has knocked on their door, you're much more likely to get that shot at that listing and get that FaceTime that you mentioned and are so right is so invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the same thing, right? For me is I always thought that buyers were the first one to react, then real estate agents and sellers were like the last, right? So
Yes.
it's just the typical cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So lots of wisdom you've obviously gained over your years and through weathering the market and it's so interesting too that you came in at this, right at this, the edge of this like precipice, and then you rode it back up again. And you've got so much that you're bringing to the agents who you mentor, I'm sure, as well. So talk to us
Mhm.
about why build a team? What was it that made you think, okay, this is something I want to do? Or was that like always in you? Or was there a need that came up that kind of insisted that you start to build a team?
When I initially started the team, it came from a place of a need, but it was really always in me in a way, right? So I got into real estate because I wanted to start a business. I always wanted to start a business. And real estate didn't really click with me as much until I actually saw it as a business.
Mm.
It's like when that happened, it's like, oh my God, this is the business that I've been wanting to have. It is a business. And back then, they weren't, these conversations were not happening in daily
Mhm.
basis and in the offices, right?
Right.
Real estate, although it was relationship based, but it was very much, transactional in the broker agent relationship.
Mhm.
Um, but once I started seeing this as a business and I started to grow my sales and put the right pieces in place in order to support myself that way, like getting the assistants and the systems, the processes. It was just time that I had people that were coming to me that wanted to be mentored just because they saw my success, but also I didn't have enough time in the day to be able to serve all my clients.
Mm.
So that's when I started bringing help. And then from there, I got a little bit of a taste that of leadership and helping others do the same thing and avoid the things that I avoided. For a long time back then, I used to say that I could probably write a book on anything that would go wrong in real estate, and I can tell you a story about it.
Mhm.
But it just, that's what's really exciting because it doesn't matter how long you've been in this business, there's always going to be unique stories that
Yeah.
are going to be super interesting. But and also it's why we still have a job, right? That we're able to navigate those waters with our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So take me back to when you said, I'm looking at this as a business. What does that mean? Like kind of dig into when you talk about looking at real estate as a business. What does that mean to you?
Well, so for a lot of time, for the longest time, I think I would just really focus on the things that people were telling me what I needed to do in order to succeed. Right? Everyone was telling you something different. It's like, no,
Mhm.
no, you can't. I don't call. You have to work your sphere. Don't. You have to call. You have to do expires. You have to do door knocking. Right? You have to do mailers. You have to. It was always like we were just like being fed this information
Mhm.
that it wasn't wrong. It just would work for someone, right? And it was
Mhm.
at that time, it was like, hey, here's our top producer, and this is what they do. You mimic them, right? You learn from them, or maybe that's what you should do. And actually, it's not the right way to teach sales because, as you know now, there's different personalities, and that people tend to lean more towards. They're going to be have more success in different aspects of this business.
Mhm.
So for me, I remember having conversation with some people back then that, were, that just like, yeah, this is my business. It was just simple as that. I'm like, I'll for the long, I just wanted the business, and I just saw this as a sales job, right? To make money.
Mhm.
And when that clicked, I was like, wow, this could be my business. So I have to start looking at it that way. And when my mindset shifted to that, then I just started seeing more opportunities, and I was starting to get more creative with the work that I was doing. And I started tracking and measuring and and getting better at it, seeing what's working, what's not working. And it just became fun, right? For me, as simple as that. It became fun. And then it was good to look back to the growth and look back to the people I've helped. And you probably know this, a lot of the relationships that we make through this business, like we keep for a long time too. So it's also interesting now to look back and work with the people that you work with over the last 14 years. So
Yeah, that's I think one of the most joyful parts of the profession is getting to reconnect with people. I mean, you stay in touch, but in this kind of more in-depth way when you're helping them through a transaction or their kids or whatever, family member.
yeah,
So that's I love the way that you put that it was when you shifted your mindset from this is not a sales job. This can be the business that I've always wanted to own. And you
yeah,
started to perceive it that way. That became the impetus for, okay, this is now fun for me. This is something I want to build and really make mine. So talk to me
exactly.
about the you talked about the structure piece of it. And I think this is something that gets lost a lot of times, especially when people are trying to build teams. And part of it is when I started to build my team, you might relate to this. I was with a big brokerage at the time, and I just knew I wanted, and it was partially out of need, but kind of like you, I always have like, I'm a builder, like I wanted to build something, and I always wanted to build it as a real estate team. I had no idea how to do that. This was long before I had been exposed to any kind of coaching or masterminds that Eli and I run together, or really any business books. I didn't go to school for business. I was a really good salesperson. I knew that, and I could lead, I could manage people, but the business piece of it, I knew nothing about. So that's where I really wanted to dig in. So I went to my sales manager at the time and I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking I'd like to do. Can you give me some resources? Can you point me in some good directions? And she said, oh, don't know a lot about that. And this is before the team thing really became something that was dominant in the real estate industry. She said, go have lunch with this person, go have lunch with this person. And I was like, that's it, go have lunch with those people. And then I was given by someone I did have lunch with, I was given Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Agent. I was like, oh, there's a blueprint here that I can start to follow. And from there, I kind of followed some breadcrumbs, but still the structure was not something I knew much about. So tell our listeners, what does that structure mean for you, and what does it look like for your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was in the same boat as you are, right? Going through this journey of starting and growing a team. And I think we were just at that time where teams were not sexy back then.
Right.
It was just, a lot of teams that were formed, if there were teams, were just really people that kind of like grouped together.
Yes.
And also a lot of the non-producers, so they can stay within an office, would just hang around that top producer. So just kind of like to be left alone, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's how teams really started, to be honest, right?
Yeah, I
No
think
one
you're
really
right.
said like it's a business, and that's how we should look at it. But
Right.
that's how I see it now, right? And for me, it's like if someone said to me like I want to start a team, it's like almost like, well, are you starting a team or are you starting a business? It's like it's the wrong, what's mindset, right? Because a lot of people want to start a team because of an ego, to have their
Mhm.
name in front and just be known for that, right? So nothing wrong with that, right? It's just like they crave that visibility and fame, right? For whatever reason, a lot of people do, and I do too. But I think that to be successful as a team, and most people don't understand that, it's really hard to stay profitable. And you have to you got to have a good plan in order to sustain it for a long period of time. So you got to really know your numbers and got to have the right foundation. Structure wise, I've hit probably every mistake that you could hit, of having a team, right? I've tried different, from figuring out the different ways to add value to our agents, to, a lot of question I get, like, what's your split structures and things like that. We try it all. I think it's whatever works for you is going to work for you. So what works for me may not work for you. You just got
Mhm.
to find that model that it's a better fit. I do think that right now teams are growing much faster and more appealing just because their team leaders and teams are able to add more value to agents, and agents are really seeking for that right now.
Mhm.
But in the current team I can tell you what our team structure looks like now. Um, Basically, you have me as a team leader. I'm your visionary. I don't know if you follow Traction at all. If
You
you,
do. I run my business through
yeah,
EOS, entrepreneurial
yes,
operating systems. That's a great read and a great way to run almost any business if you haven't checked it out yet. Great book.
yeah. I've read that book like 4 or 5 times, right? And probably listened to it so many times too. It's just like I'm one of those guys that I tend to find something that I like and just go at it until I've learned it.
Yep.
But basically you have me as a visionary, and from there, we still don't have an integrator spot 100%, but I do have an operation director. I have a sales manager, and then we have a transaction manager, a listing manager. We have an ISA department. We have a marketing manager, and we have two other administrative that work on projects and day-to-day tasks and filing. um, and we have an editing team and a videographer that does our listings and our videos. I think I'm not missing anyone, but we didn't start here, right? We just started adding the pieces, and for a while, every time we would add something new, it was challenging because we didn't have the roadmap to it, right? It was just like, it's like you hear ISA departments a lot, right? I started implementing ISA department like a while back. I just like I it never worked for me in the beginning, but I
Mhm.
realized, like anything else, you really can't expect something to work unless you give it the time and the attention
Yeah.
and the accountability that that person needs. And only one person can actually own that, right? So if you're a team leader and you're trying to do all this yourself, it's going to be really hard to maintain it, right? Not alone, see it grow and flourish to where it could go. But really, this is like our structure. And the reason why it's this way is because we want our agent to focus on the things that matter most in the agent activities, right? And I think for us, we want our agent to find only the time to be able to build relationships, right? Nurture them, so prospecting and following up, and just spending time with clients face to face, right? Either consultation, meetings, appointments, and negotiating deals, right? It's the other aspect. So everything else around that, we have the systems and the process for it, so they don't have to figure it out, right? They don't have to worry about those issues. The leadership team is actually handling that for them, right? And they can just focus on, leading, mentoring, selling, helping their clients, right? And I think that a lot of agents right now are resonating with that, and they want to be a part of a team that provides that.
Absolutely. That support is so important and a huge part, I think, of what makes a successful team. And you clearly got that figured out. And what you're describing for everybody listening who's has heard Eli go through the structure of his team and kind of like the departments, that's advanced. So that is an advanced team. That is not the basic team that you normally see at the beginning. There's kind of an ops chart, which certainly we could share with you. Reach out if you want to see it. That's more basic, that has the pieces that you should think about plugging in at the beginning and the order in which to do them. But where you are is far beyond the beginnings of most teams. And you make a couple of really good points. One being the team leader, who is typically the visionary, cannot be the head of all departments. That does not work, nor should it work, because you always want to bring people in, ideally, who are better at whatever that other department does than you could ever be. That's what really gets you some real traction and momentum, is when you start to bring those people around you. And then the other part is the accountability. And I want to take you back to when you said know your numbers, because I'm imagining some people are wondering, what does that mean? So talk about knowing your numbers and why that's important.
Yeah, I think that's super important because you need to be able to measure and track everything you do, right? I started as simple as really just tracking my pipeline of buyers on the spreadsheet, right? So I would just write down everyone's name, what they were looking for, what their price point was, what the potential income I was going to make, and I would just that was my spreadsheet, right? And before a spreadsheet was a yellow notepad, by the way, right? But it was a spreadsheet, and that I got me into the habit of that. Then I started tracking to make sure that I was hitting the right amount of dials and conversations and appointments, right, that I was having. But fast forward now for our business, the things that we always make sure that we're measuring. One, it's that we in the team aspect, right? We're paying attention to see, like, for example, what we do it every week. We have a LTA meeting, right? Just probably as you do. And we measure to see, like, what is the amount of new transaction, new deals that come in, and overall, where are we year to date and compared to this month compared to last month, right? Where we go back 3 years just to see, for example, where we are and how are we tracked into our goals, and I love the fact that we can actually foresee to, like, what is our future going to look like in the next 3 months as well, or in real estate, like, are we head in that right direction? So I can tell you, for example, just based on the amount of appointments we've had and new leads coming in, I have an idea where we're going to end up for next month, right? So it gives us the ability to be able to adjust a little bit, right? And this is great too for an agent perspective, because it brings opportunities for coaching with that agent too.
Yeah.
So just knowing those numbers, regarding make sure that your business is actually performing and it's going to be staying alive, right? And you're bringing cash flow. I think it's important. And then from there, you need to understand, like, from the deals on the contract to offers written, right, to people that you're working with, to appointments set, to new leads coming into the pipeline. How many are you generating? To how many dials, text messages, emails, right? Are you doing open houses? All those things. We track all of that in the team level and for agent level as well.
Now, when you
Our
say
agents
we
tend
track,
to
keep going.
so our agent, for example, they know their numbers, right? That every week they have an accountability group, but also, for example, they know what their goal is for as far as appointments and contracts they want to write for the month and offers they want to have and what they need to do and the path that they have in order to reach that. So, and if they're for some reason they have not accomplished those, we always discuss, like, what got in the way, right? And see if there's any coaching opportunities there. But for the most part with our team, it's not really activity. I think that every agent is different. But we do spend a lot of time to making sure that agents have the right intentions, right? And they're using the right, they're asking closing questions and they're connecting with the client, right? With the client. So we spend a lot of time there as well.
Fantastic. And it sounds like it's very transparent, the way that you track and the way that your team knows exactly what they're trying to hit. So they've got clarity that so many agents
Exactly.
don't have. And I love too that you're able to in a sense create some certainty, because you're looking at what we call leading indicators, not just lagging indicators, as you're tracking these numbers. Now, when you say we track, I'm assuming you use a system of some sort to track these numbers, and it's not actually you going in or a team member going in and marking all of these.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, that part gets a little bit messy, right? It's really hard to get agents to track everything. So you gotta have the right systems in place for it. Data integrity is something that we're striving to have all the time as in our team, and I feel like in our business industry as well. So we utilize, we have Sisu that we use to track, right? But we also our CRM is Follow Boss, and that's really helpful to track a lot of the leading indicators and agent activity. So we do both, and a little bit of people work behind the scenes, and I think that helps. Like, we have a VA, for example, that just really, her job is making sure that all our numbers are updated in weekly basis. So
Nice, nice. Yeah. And again, that's when you get to that team level, that's something that you want to have in place. I think looking at it from the level of even like a solo agent, though, if you can get yourself into a habit of, you're your own boss, right? When you're operating as a solo operator. So think of yourself that way, hold yourself accountable. And if you can spring for a system like a follow-up boss or even a less expensive CRM, a contact relationship management system, that will give you some data so you can see how you yourself are doing. That's also going to
mhm.
give you some insights into what you need to improve on and can work on. And sometimes it's grab a coach who can help you with those things, or have a mentor or coach who can help you analyze those numbers and see how you can take yourself to the next level. Because once you get to the next level, then if building a team is something you want to do, it makes sense to think about building a team and really operationalizing.
No, I agree. I mean, just the nature of a business, we don't get that immediate satisfaction, right? The transaction timeline is like longer, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's like it's very relationship driven than it's transactional driven, right? Because like by the time you meet someone and they buy a home and they close, it's just all this time has gone by, and you can't help it but build a relationship with that person, right?
Right.
Our clients spend a lot of time with us and they hear from us so much. But I remember for me, it was just because of that, it kind of gave me the sense where like I knew what I was working on my pipeline, that
Right.
everything's gonna be okay, right? I'm the right track. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like having that, it's like even though I didn't get that deal or that closing or that contract, right? I can look at my pipeline and know like, hey, you know what? I just need to do this and I'm on the right direction and I can hit my goals, right? So and it's also nice to see like how much income you could have based on the pipeline that you see. So it kept me
Yeah.
motivating.
Oh, love it. Man, I cannot believe we are already at time. I was saying to Eli that this always flies by, and it does. I feel like I could ask you so many more questions. This has been wonderful, and I know that our audience is going to get a ton out of this. It's like I said, a different subject than we've talked about in depth before. So I thank you so much for sharing all of
Yeah.
your wisdom and experience with us. Now, if anyone wants to find you, your team, if they're interested in joining your team or doing a transaction buy or sell with you, what's the best way for them to find your team and you?
Yes. So, for me, you can find me at Agent Eli Q on all across. So basically Instagram, Twitter, I'm there. And for our team, just you can go to our website at qnduteam.com. We're in the Greater Philadelphia area. So if you want to talk more about what we discussed here, just reach out. I'm always looking to, be part of a bigger conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli. So appreciate it. This has been great for me as well. All right. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. We appreciate you. And I want to thank the sponsors who make this show possible, the Rozek team with Embrace Mortgage, Paul Harsani with First National Bank, Village Settlements, and Peak Settlements. Please consider reaching out to our sponsors and reach out to Eli with any questions that you have, or if you would like to do business where he works. He and his team are fantastic, and I know would be more than delighted to serve you. Feel free to connect with us both on social media, and please remember to leave us a review or rating on the platform on which you listen. We always love to hear from you. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time. I keep hearing from agents over and over again that they can't find listings. Well, you know who is getting listings? The local expert, the hyper-local geo farmer. If you want to find out how to become that local expert and get more listings, you need to read Farming for Real Estate Agents. It's a blueprint that tells you step-by-step exactly what to do to choose, cultivate, and dominate a hyper-local geographic farm area. You can pick up your copy anywhere books are sold.